Welcome to Virtually Amazing Assistants, the podcast for assistants everywhere. If you've not met me before, my name is Shelley Fishel. I'm known as the MS Office Maestro, and I've been training assistants, business owners, organizations for over 25 years on Microsoft Office applications, and I still do that. However, I have a passion for assistants. I think you're all amazing. Businesses wouldn't work without you. And so I've created this podcast for assistants everywhere. Over the coming weeks, I'm going to be chatting each week with a different guest expert. We'll find out how they got to where they are, what they're up to now, and how they can help you. Tips and tricks abundant. We will learn loads. So that's me, Shelley Fishel. Enough of this introduction. In a moment, I'll be bringing on my guest. Welcome to this week's episode of Virtually Amazing Assistants, the podcast for virtual assistants everywhere. And today I have the amazing Karen Cureton of Cureton Consulting with me. And I'm just going to crib from my little bio here because I can't always remember everything, but I've got bullet points. So Karen is a social media trainer, which is very interesting to our audience. Whether you're a VA, an EA, or a PA, you're likely using social media in some shape or form. So we're going to have a lovely chat about that. And she's got over 20 years of corporate sales experience. Karen's been focusing on helping women in business navigate social media for the past decade. She's known for her jargon-free, supportive, and no-nonsense approach. And she's spoken for international brands like IOSH and IOD. I'm going to ask you what IOSH is because I don't know what that stands for. Karen and I met. We're part of an amazing community of trainers. Like the VAs and the EAs and PAs have their own internal and external networks. Trainers also need a network, and we network all the time and help each other out with training questions. So, Karen, have I missed anything from my introduction?
No. IOSH is the
Yeah.
Institute of Safety and Health, IOSH.
Oh,
So
okay.
I was invited to speak at their AGM in Birmingham a couple of years back.
Oh,
So no, I
okay.
don't think you've missed anything. Only thing I would add very timely is I'm originally from Newcastle upon Tyne. I'm now based in the East Midlands, but I work with clients as far as field as New Zealand now, which is super
Amazing.
exciting.
That's very exciting. A few questions I've prepared, and listeners, I have sent the questions ahead of time to Karen, so she's not going to be wrong-footed by me saying something and saying, "Oh, you didn't prepare me for that." But we're going to have a free-flowing conversation, so we may not touch on all the questions, but we'll see. So, Karen, my first actual real question is, which I don't know why I've never asked you this before, is why did you leave the corporate world? And why the transition from corporate sales to social media? What sparked all of that? Because our
Oh,
listeners really like to understand the journey and the person.
I absolutely agree. And I absolutely loved my job. I worked in new homes. I was like a stick of rock. It was new homes through and through. Absolutely loved my job. But I didn't get married until I'd let out a lot of daft and silly and was in my late 30s when I got married and really wanted to have a family. And being this career obsessed, think about Miranda in Devil Wears Prada. I think
Yeah,
that's what I think I was like. I was sales director for a national house builder, super focused on what I wanted to do. Being a mummy just didn't fit my values. I came from a world where it was bank, working on call 7 days a week. That didn't fit with being a new mum, with having no family nearby. My parents were nearly a 3-hour drive away. I had no network in our area. And I fell into it because the thing I was most passionate about in my job was the training and development side of it. And with a colleague, we developed a training program for our sales team because actually teaching people to sell new homes is a very specific skill set.
mm,
And then when I was on maternity leave, I got itchy feet and was desperate to go back. And they kept saying, "Can you come back and do some training? Can you come back and do some training?" And I started looking at social media because my lovely husband said, "Do you know, it's maybe you could set up a consultancy doing a bit of training, a bit of this." And I said, "Yeah, but I can't just do sales training." And then I started looking at social media. I was a really early adopter.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is a great way for individuals and organizations to get a presence online with relatively low investment. And I got completely hooked on it. And I remember, I think probably Josh was 3, and I was getting calls from headhunters offering me ridiculous amount of money to go back. But I wanted to be home. Firstly, I wanted to be home with him. I'd waited a long time to be a parent.
Yeah.
And secondly, actually, I was loving this new world because actually, when you teach people to sell, Shelley, you build know and trust, you build rapport. When you're selling, online, you're building rapport, and people forget that. It's about
Yeah.
relationship. I'll often say to my lovely clients, let's focus on building a relationship with people first. They will know you, they'll remember you for being a trusted person, and when they're ready, they'll come back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All the time. That's really interesting. I didn't know that. So now I've learned something new. That's really good. So if we're talking social media, so I know you've got a couple of training, you've got a new training program coming out, haven't you? An
Mm,
online one.
yeah.
Are your training programs all online like mine, or are they a mix of online and in person?
The most popular ones are the ones that people can just drop in online. So I've got 2 memberships going 2 I must be mad. 2 memberships going in live in 2025, which is really exciting. One for trainers and coaches, and one for women in business who are overwhelmed or frightened of social media. So, two very different things. But then also post COVID, I do the occasional live in person workshop. And actually, I go to clients' offices and do group sessions. I work with quite a large law firm, actually, really refreshing. They're trying to change perception of lawyers through getting to be real people on LinkedIn. So it's a blend, but the majority of people just like the convenience of logging into their computer, dropping in, and learning as and when suits them. I think there is that, isn't I know what you do
Yeah.
is all online, but I've got to confess, I'm a straight talking girl. I love the energy of being a room. I
Yeah.
hosted a full day session for LinkedIn in October, actually. It was on Halloween. I don't know, that was a bit dodgy, but did it on Halloween. And in the
Did you go
morning,
in your witch's hat? Did you wear a witch's
I
hat?
was really tempted, but I didn't because professional Karen kicked in. And we had in the morning, we did the workshop, and then the afternoon, we had implementation time,
Oh, brilliant.
which was
Absolutely.
really, and I loved it. I came home, I was shattered, absolutely shattered. But I said to my other half, I said, what a wonderful day. And we've all adapted, as some of us have had to adapt to the online world, but it is wonderful. But saying that, last week I delivered a session to a bunch of volunteers for local projects, and they're working within areas with vulnerable individuals. It's all funded by the local authority, the local police crime commissioner, actually. And that was all online, and there was 15 of them, and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Because it is
Yeah.
what you make of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I love delivering live online. I have the online courses obviously for the core Microsoft applications, and if you want to buy one and get one and go from A to Z of each and learn all the ins and outs, you can, or just the bits you want. But the bit that really makes me happy is
Mm.
when usually a corporate body will come to me and say, we've got 10 people and they need to get better at Outlook or PowerPoint or Teams or something. And then it's an in person. And in fact,
Yeah.
I've actually got some work in the diary for next June, which is bizarre.
Wow.
'Cause I'm not, yeah, somebody's approached me and they want me to do a series of 9 workshops in next June, that's the
Oh,
furthest ahead
wonderful.
I've ever
How
had any bookings.
wonderful.
I'm not sure they'll actually happen. I'll believe it when they happen. But in the
Best I can
meantime,
do is
so
March. I've got a booking for a LinkedIn workshop in March, and I've just booked my own LinkedIn workshop in person for April and got my
oh,
first
that's
booking for
amazing.
that. But it is that I'm really looking forward actually to your webinar on the new look
Yeah.
outlook because I've resisted moving over to it because I'm just used like we all are. We don't change, do we?
No, we don't. But change is the only constant, as I'm learning as I get older. But anyway, bringing it back to our audience are virtual assistants,
Mm,
executive assistants, and personal assistants. And everybody, as I said in the beginning, will be using social media, whether it's their own personal Instagram, whether it's updating their LinkedIn for themselves or for their company, or a bit
mm.
of both, maybe on Facebook. I don't really want to talk about Facebook so much because what I'm finding is that the younger generation are going away from Facebook because we're all on it. So they that's what my experience is. My kids don't go on there anyway anymore because I'm there. But
No.
so what pitfalls, I don't even know if it's the right question. What pitfalls do you come across for VAs who wear the social media manager hat? So a VA, my VA manages my social media, but she isn't a social media manager. She just
Yeah.
happens to get me, get my business, and know what I want. We've maybe I've communicated correctly because that's most of it, isn't it? It's the
I
communication.
think I think that is absolutely 100% at the heart of it. So I had a meeting with a lady earlier this year who's paying her VA to do her social media. And I said, "So how's it going?" Knowing it probably wasn't going that well, which is why we were chatting. And she said, "Well, not." She's been doing it for a year and I've not had any results. I said, "Well, I'm going to take a step back." And I've got the VA's corner.
Yeah,
And I said, firstly, what brief did she give you? What collateral did she give you? How often do you get together and chat about the focus and direction? And are you really clear about what exactly you want her to do? And she went, well, not doing any of that. And I think the pitfall can be for a lot of VAs, and I'm going to be very generalist here,
yeah,
Shelley,
yeah, yeah, of
is
course.
that it's all about the brief. If I'm going to, and I do a small amount of social media management, I'm extremely picky about who I work with because I know that a VA is offering a great service that is cost effective and affordable for a lot of people. But what I insist with my clients is before I even touch their accounts, is we sit down and we spend 2 hours talking about, and for VAs, you guys could do this,
Yeah,
talking about what are the core objectives of the business, what's your measurement of success, what's great going to look like, who's responsible for what. I work with a small chain of garages over on the East Coast and I manage their socials. And we just use a Trello board. We get together once a month, but we use a Trello board, which allows them to drop in collateral and make sure that we have got everything that I need because I can only do as good enough job if they provide me with the collateral. So I'm managing them, managing their social media for them. And I think I would say to any virtual assistants, make sure you have it's almost think of it as client onboarding.
yes,
And for me personally, that's non negotiable unless they're willing to spend 2 hours online, Teams, however you choose, whatever platform you choose, to spend that time. And then I put that into a document that says, this is what we agreed. These are the
yeah,
priorities. This is your responsibility, and this is what I'm going to do. So, for example, the law firm that I work with, I manage their socials. I do Facebook and LinkedIn. The agreement is from the onboarding is that I will do everything, respond to any engagement, but I will also ask them to reply to any private messages. I don't respond to
yeah,
any private messages. So we have agreements in place, and it's almost, and I'm a builder's daughter, Shelley. That's putting the foundations in place for your social media success. If you're doing it for a client, you need to start there and be really clear about what your responsibilities are, because I think that's where the pitfalls lie.
yeah. I think that is really good advice. And I know that Zita and I, if I've got something new coming up that's really complex, I'll say, when have you got half an hour for a call? And we'll get on a call and I'll explain what I'm doing so that she understands when I bombard her with stuff, why and what and how I want to happen. For example, for the webinar, I only decided last week. First, it was a feeler to see if there was an appetite for the
Mm,
webinar. I've now got enough interest in the webinar to say, okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So now it's going to be, once I've put it together, it's going to be a case of building it out and then promoting it. And it was sometime in January, although this episode may well go out after that webinar
Yeah.
takes place. So yeah, and what about a PA? If you're in a large organization, because I can imagine, I don't do this, but I can imagine that maybe you've got a mid-sized organization that doesn't really understand.
Mhm.
They just know they need to be on social
Oh,
media.
yeah.
And so they task one of their PAs and they say, look, you've got a good Instagram account. You seem to be all right. Why don't you do it?
Oh,
So, what do you think? How can we help them? Because we've got PAs and EAs that we're listening to.
wow.
And I imagine there might be some that fall into that bracket.
I've got a really good true story about a PA. So
Okay, go on.
This PA was working for a large casino in Nottingham, and she was a very good PA. And he said, "You're very good on your phone. We see your Instagram. Will you do our social media?" And I would almost wind back. So one of the things I would say is, if you are a PA in an organization, make sure that organization has a social media policy in place to protect you and your employees. But this particular young woman, I can say she was a young woman because I met her, was given free rein. And she was writing from the perspective of a 22-year-old woman.
Right.
And that is a challenge. If you are of a younger generation and you're working in a more corporate environment, your tone of voice has to reflect the organization. So, as a for example, with my law firm clients, we use a scheduler, which means that I can put the content in as a PA would, but it doesn't go out until somebody in seniority has signed off and approved that content. So I would say, as PAs, you want to protect your back. And but just like the VAs and the EAs, it's about what is the scope of this project? Are you wanting me to create content? In which case, is that really within your skill set? Are you a dab hand on Canva or Adobe or whatever portal
Yeah.
you're using to create your design? Is anybody approving this? Are you getting sign off? And I would always play in the hands of the person that's being the social media ambassador for the business. And I've worked with quite a few businesses where I go out and train a member of their staff. In fact, I had a call a month ago and I need to contact her again. A young woman, she'd done a degree at Derby University and she had a job working as an administrator for a local company that does videos and audio, that type of thing. And she said, they've asked me to do their social media. And she says, honestly, Karen, I've been doing it for 6 months and they're charging people to that we are doing their social media for them. And we're not getting any results. I said, firstly, and I think with the PAs and with the EAs and VAs, there's that thing around setting expectations. Best advice I would give is make sure that you've got really robust expectations in place. I will never take it over an account to run somebody's social media unless it's for a minimum of 6 months. Because a lot of organizations, like you touched on, Shay, maybe let's be dinosaurs. And they just say, we need to be there. We need to have a presence. They think they should be there. And they expect results like that. And
Yeah.
when you have a service-based business, people don't need what you offer every day, week, and month. So I would always position the client's expectations. You need to have at least 6 months to start and get under the skin of it, get some traction. And that's whatever sort of assistant role you're in, I think.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. And I know, like for me, it's about I'm in technology, I'm doing tech all day long. So to some extent, I have to be there because I have to show that I'm forward thinking and that I
Mm.
know what's down with the kids, so to speak.
Yeah.
But also for me anyway, it's about building my own personal brand and presence so that when that person needs a course on whatever it is, I'm the person that they think of. So it's almost impossible, I think, to quantify results unless you're doing a launch, I think. and you're
Yeah,
launching a specific thing, then you know what your results are. But I think
yeah.
otherwise it's very hard. I've had people come to me for training and they've seen one lady came to me, "Oh, I found you online and you are the answer to my prayers," she said to me. That's very nice. But I think, yeah, I think it's communication, and I totally get it with the onboarding. I think that's a really important point. And if your client isn't prepared to pay you for 2 hours or an hour of your time to sit
Mm.
down and flesh it out, then maybe you should say no to doing the job because
Yeah.
they're not going to give you the support that you need in order to do the job properly.
It's
So,
the phrase I use, which is I'll often use this phrase is we need to make sure it's designed for success to give you the best return on investment. Because
yeah,
otherwise, you're not giving me a fair chance to make this work. And the other thing I would say is also make sure when you're doing that plan is that you've actually set some metrics for success and you agree a point for renewal. I will usually meet with my clients every month. We will drop stuff into a Trello board. I quite often have either a Telegram or a WhatsApp group where we can drop stuff in. Like I chased them today, for example, because they were supposed to get some drone footage of their new garage. And so I think it's making and agreeing how you're going to communicate as well is really important.
yeah,
And setting some boundaries. If you are an independent, self-employed VA or EA, you need to agree some boundaries. I've got one client will WhatsApp me at 8 o'clock at night because that's when it suits her. So that doesn't, I don't work that late. I'm not that
yes,
desperate to work. But whereas if you're a PA, there might be demands made on you that might would ordinarily be made to a self-employed person where I might say, oh, I want you to come along and live stream at an awards dinner we're hosting or whatever. And is that within the scope of your role?
yeah. I think that's a really good point. I think that is a really good point. So, just to start wrapping up, although I think I could keep chatting for ages, but we're going out for dinner tonight, so I need to start wrapping this up. So, what tips can you give to our listeners on managing their own? Because often a VA will be tasked with doing their clients. But what
Mm,
about their own social media? I know I was asking, I was sharing something I'd come across with Zita. I said, look, I
mm.
think this is going to make a great plan for 2025. And she said, "Oh, that's really good. I've not seen that before. I'm paying someone to do my social media
Yeah.
because she doesn't have the time to do it because she's busy doing mine and all the other brilliant stuff that she does because she doesn't. I think I'm an exception in the social media camp because she works with a lot of our trainers actually and supports
Mm.
lots of our trainers. So
I
what
think
tips can you
if
offer?
you're doing your own social media, think of your news feed like a really interesting magazine on your subject. Make sure, I will often say, I'm a big fan of batching content. So
Yes.
I would recommend that you come up with maybe 10 content themes. So content pillars like, your differentiation. Why would I work with you rather than somebody else? Who do you help? How do you help them? Testimonials, social media gold. But I think what I've found recently, the best performing posts are the personality posts.
Yes.
So I will often talk about the 3 Ps framework. This is a really simple one to remember if you're just getting started or even if you're feeling a bit stuck with your own socials. So the first P is personality. The more personality, people get a sense of who you are, your style, that sort of thing. Problem solving. It's proven that people will spend money with you when you can establish what problems they solve. As,
Problems.
as humans, we're very good at talking about the facts about what we do, not the benefits. So, an EA, a VA, PA are going to save people time, save money, save headspace. All of this is really valuable stuff. And the third P is anything you can do to position you as an authority. And those 3 Ps I find really useful. And the last tip I would give, because I know we're tight on time, because I could give tips all day long, is make sure that you've got a methodology to get your audience off your social media. I know this is counterintuitive, off your social media onto your mailing list. Make sure you've got some freebies, some tips, some downloads, case studies, whatever's right for your business. This year, I've really focused on that and I've grown my list substantially by creating list building content and making sure, and actually, really excitingly, it's starting to work and it's converting, which is even better.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect advice. Absolutely good advice because we don't own our social media content. The platform does. And they can close down at the blink of an eye. And
Yeah,
then you've
yeah,
lost all of that history of content,
yeah, yeah.
which is a very sad
Well,
thought, isn't it? But
it
yeah,
is
so the minute you get them off there and onto your own mailing list,
100%.
then you own that list. That's absolutely true. Karen, it's been fantastic. And there's lots of nuggets of gold in that interview, chat, whatever you want to call it.
It's been
I'm getting
amazing. Thank you. Thank you
it's
so
been
much.
great. No, it's been great. And if you want to get in touch with Karen, I'll be putting her social media connections, email, and all the rest of it in the show notes. Virtually Amazing Assistants will have its own website by launch date. So everything will go on there. And yeah, it's very exciting. And it's been really lovely talking to you. And I'll see you probably in Trainer Talk before I see you
Yeah,
or on LinkedIn, because
or on
we
LinkedIn,
see
of
each other
course.
on LinkedIn a lot. Yeah.
And thank you so much for inviting me. I've absolutely loved it. I feel like we could chat for hours.
Yeah, and our listeners will have learnt so much, which for me is the main thing. So thank you very much, Karen. I'm going to stop recording right now. Thanks for listening. I'm going to see you next week with my next guest on the Virtually Amazing Assistants podcast. And that's me, Shelley Fishel, the MS Office Maestro, signing off for this week.